I'm Nick Walker with your live weather update, and we're continuing to see snow here in portions of Pennsylvania, back toward West Virginia and Ohio. Just a little bit of light leftover snow from the system that brought a half a foot and more yesterday. We'll see abundant snowfall here around Washington State, Oregon, on down into California and eastward for the next few days. Unusually heavy for this time of year will be the 3 to 5 inches that you can expect to see even around Seattle and Portland as we head into Wednesday and on into Thursday. Stay tuned. We'll have live weather updates every half hour, or check out weather.com.
It was one of those days where you just knew it wasn't good.
Something about it just kind of put me on edge.
It looks like that thing is right on top of Greensburg. Your time is up. You need to be in your shelter right now.
Everything started falling on top of us.
As I was turning around, the roof started ripping up.
I literally got blown off the road into the ditch. I took everything that I know as far as survival skills and I threw them out the window.
The last thing I told him was, I don't want to die, and then I lost him.
Somebody said, take him to the hospital. We didn't realize there was no hospital.
From the Weather Channel, this is Storm Stories with meteorologist Jim Cantore.
Springtime. In rural Kansas, it marks the start of planting season and tornado season.
We know that there can be a certain number of tornadoes every spring. Usually they're not too severe. Just have to keep an eye on them, make sure you're not in the path.
The small town of Greensburg, population 1,500, sits 2 hours west of Wichita, at the heart of what meteorologists call Tornado Alley. This alley, a corridor stretching from South Dakota down to Texas, sees more tornadoes than anywhere else in the world. And in 2007, Greensburg will suffer its worst one yet. Greensburg resident Dennis McKinney is used to dealing with Mother Nature. The state representative grew up working his parents' farm 17 miles away, land he still farms today. It can be a lengthy commute to the state capitol in Topeka, but he and his family love calling Greensburg home.
Communities like Greensburg are just wonderful places to raise children. Great places to live, to retire. People look out after each other.
You just know everybody, and everybody knows you, and small town life.
Their neighbors are looking forward to raising a family in Greensburg, too. Chris Koss and Kelsey Schroth moved in next door to the McKinneys after buying their dream home, which they share with their 9-month-old son, Jaden, and dog, Chopper.
The house was just amazing. It was a dream home. I mean, anything that you'd ever want out of life. You know, we have a beautiful home.
After I had Jaden, Dennis would see us outside. He'd come over and talk to us.
We were watching him grow up, of course, and noticed he was growing pretty fast.
May 4th, 2007. Around 3 p.m., Chris pulls into his driveway. He and his dog Chopper are headed 30 miles north to Kinsley, Kansas on business. But the day is unseasonably warm, over 85 degrees, and Chris is thirsty.
We stopped off to get something to drink. I didn't know that was going to be the last time I was going to see the house, or the town for that fact.
On the way out of Greensburg, he notices several trucks stopped along the road.
We noticed storm spotters sitting on 183 and 54 highway. My brother had actually made the comment, you know, there must be going to be something going on.
There is. A halting mass of low pressure approaching the Great Plains has begun to tap warm, moist air flowing north across Texas and Oklahoma. A supercell forms over Harper County, Oklahoma, and begins moving north and east into Kansas. But as afternoon turns to evening, Kelsey Schroth isn't paying much attention to the weather. With Chris 30 miles away in Kinsley, she is taking care of their 9-month-old son, Jaden, solo. And tonight, that task is particularly difficult.
Nothing was making him happy, so I gave him a bath. At this time, my mom was calling. She was watching the weather and told me to just get ready in case the weather gets bad. Well, we live in Kansas, so, you know, weather's bad all the time, and you don't really think much of it, you know. So I wasn't too worried about it.
But her next-door neighbor, Dennis McKinney, is.
It was one of those days where you just knew it wasn't good. The weather was unsettled, it was windy, you could tell the barometric pressure was low because you'd hear the drains gurgling.
I remember it being really hot and just humid and just not very nice weather. Something about it just kind of put me on edge.
Back at the McKinney house, Lindy is cooking. Her mom, Jean, is out of town, leaving the 8th grader in charge of dinner for Dad, Dennis.
I remember I was making eggs because they're easy and I could make them. I remember it started hailing pretty bad.
Already the storm has spawned funnel clouds. As it approaches Greensburg, Doppler radar measures winds rushing around its center at 100 miles per hour.
Turned on the TV because we wanted to watch the radar. We wanted to check, see what kind of storms there were and where they were at. And I was eating supper and the sirens went off.
The sirens can only mean one thing. A tornado has been spotted. Lindy jumps up from the table.
And that's when I started, moving around. I put my shoes on. I just get downstairs, and I just kind of stayed down there, turned on the TV down there.
Well, Lindy said, Dad, get your boots on and get downstairs. It was still, at that point, moving southwest to northeast. I called some friends of mine that were storm spotters. I said, what's it doing? They said, it's moving northeast. So at that point, I thought it looks like it will miss us.
But the tornado makes a sudden, unusual swerve toward Greensburg. And what had looked like a narrow miss now looks like a direct hit.
One of the weathermen for one of the local affiliates came on, who's always normally very controlled, very matter of fact. He said, this is bad, this is very, very bad. This is the worst possible signature this can have on radar. You've got to take this seriously, and you've got to take cover.
Boy, I sure hate to tell you this, friends, but it looks like that thing is right on top of Greensburg. Your time is up. You need to be in your shelter right now.
And that's when it really got my attention. That's when I started to feel a little surge of adrenaline then.
Chris Koss is 30 miles from Greensburg in Kinsley, Kansas on business when he starts fielding anxious phone calls from Kelsey.
Initially, I was telling him, come home, there's a storm coming, and I don't like to be alone during storms. And when I realized how bad the storm was and how bad it was going to be, I was telling him to stay where he was, don't come home.
Chris used to be a long-haul truck driver. He knows how dangerous the roads will be in this weather, but the thought of Kelsey and Jaden facing a tornado without him is just too much to stomach, and he decides to attempt the trip back to Greensburg anyway.
I jumped in the car. I took everything that I know as far as survival skills, and I threw them out the window. People were actually parked on the side of the road with the hazards on. That was actually the only reason I could tell the road was straight. I couldn't really tell it was hailing, raining. The windshield wipers weren't keeping up. Every worst case imaginable, worst driving conditions that you could ever have.
From the cab of his truck, Chris is still able to reach Kelsey sporadically via cell phone, but Kelsey is growing more panicked. She needs to hunker down with Jaden before the storm hits, but their home has no basement.
They tell you to go to a bathtub and put, pillows or blankets or whatever over you. So I set some towels down in there and sat down in there with him. It just didn't feel right. So we got out. I decided to go to the master bedroom into our big walk-in closet.
By now, the tornado is just minutes away from Kelsey's house. 200-mile-an-hour winds have sliced through Greensburg's transmission lines, cutting power and silencing the tornado siren's blare. Racing down Highway 183, Chris makes a frantic call to his next-door neighbor, Dennis McKinney.
Phone rang, still had a landline. It was Chris, and he said, I'm going to send Kelsey and the baby over because they don't have a basement. And I said, they're coming over?
He says, sure, send her over, it's getting bad.
I remember my dad sounded pretty frantic. He just said, hurry, tell her to hurry. Tell her to come to the back door.
I went out the back door. Well, I stepped down the deck and I shined my flashlight over there and nobody came.
I was going between talking to Chris and talking to my mom. My mom was telling me to stay there and Chris was telling me to go over to the neighbors.
Kelsey is confronted with an agonizing decision: brave the elements to get to underground shelter next door or weather the storm inside the house above ground.
Dennis thought we were coming over, so I tried to open our glass sliding door. It just wouldn't budge. The suction from the wind, I couldn't open the door. So by that time, I knew something was terribly wrong and it was too late for me to go anywhere.
Dennis McKinney still thinks Kelsey and Jaden are coming over and worries when they fail to show up.
I was getting kind of scared and stuff started blowing around the deck and nobody came. And I was holding the door shut and then I heard the glass blow out of the south side of the house.
Dennis is struggling against 60-mile-an-hour winds, a losing proposition.
I I picked up Jaden, and with one arm, I was holding him, and the other, I pulled the mattress off the bed and went in the closet and propped the mattress outside the door. It sounded like baseballs coming through my window from the hill. And then the next thing I know, everything was dark, and I hear the walls starting to crack behind me.
I turned around and started running down the basement steps that were immediately behind me. And as I was turning around, the roof started ripping off, and I was partway down the steps when the ceiling came down. All I could think of was, I'm not stopping now.
I just kind of remember him running by me, grabbing me. We could hear it upstairs. And so he, said, get in the bathtub. And I was concerned about Kelsey and the baby. And I just started praying.
Chris Koss is just a few miles north of Greensburg. In a desperate attempt to get to his family, he is driving into, not away from, the storm. From behind the wheel, Chris reaches Kelsey's cell phone one more time, but the wind overwhelms the truck, knocking his phone onto the floorboard.
Telephone poles started breaking. Trees actually land in front of the highway in front of me. I get blown off the road.
I can remember the last thing I told him before I lost all service at all was, I don't want to die. And then I lost him.
Mom, where does non-dairy creamer come from?
Get real about what you put in your coffee. Le Creme, real dairy from real cows in 4 amazing all-natural flavors. Get real. Get Le Creme.
Homeowners, rates have been going up, but you can still refinance to a fixed rate as low as 4.5% at LendingTree.com, where customers save an average of $293 a month. Call LendingTree at 1-800-800-8733 today.
Nationwide Insurance, I'm all ears.
I bought my policy online, and I haven't heard from the company since.
When Pam switches to Nationwide Insurance, we're not going to treat her like Policy 413. We're going to treat her like Pam. Get to know her. Be proactive. Oh, and rename the company Nation Pam.
Oh.
Done. Nation Pam is on yours. Sam, we'll make that work.
Binder & Binder is America's most successful Social Security disability advocates.
We'll deal with the government. You have enough to worry about.
So if you're disabled, call 1-800-66-BINDER.
These drivers demand the most from their tires. They choose Goodyear. And everything we've learned making these tires inspires what we roll into yours. Goodyear, more driven.
I can't get rid of these weeds or these nasal allergies.
I know what works differently than many other allergy medications. Omneris. Omneris to the nose. Did you know nasal symptoms like congestion can be caused by allergic inflammation? Omneris relieves your symptoms by fighting inflammation. Side effects may include headache, nosebleed, and sore throat.
I knew.